Taejin brushed away 5 centuries of dust from the metal panel. His hands shook slightly as he worked in the dim light of the underground archive. The room smelled old, like forgotten memories and rusted metal. He had spent 3 years searching for this place, hidden deep beneath the surface of Europa, one of Jupiter's frozen moons. Found something, he whispered into his communicator. Though no one else was around to hear him speak louder, the panel showed strange symbols. Taejin recognized some of them from his studies. He was a historian, someone who spent his life digging through humanity's past. Most people thought his work was boring. They were wrong. The past held secrets that could change everything. Earth had been quiet for 500 years. The Great Wars were over. Humanity had spread across the solar system and beyond, meeting other species among the stars. They joined something called the Galactic Council, a group of civilizations that promised peace and cooperation. Earth became known for art, philosophy, and beautiful gardens. Nobody remembered the soldiers anymore. Nobody talked about the weapons. Taejin remembered. Or at least, he tried to. The old records were scattered, many of them locked away or destroyed. His grandmother had told him stories before she died, stories about machines so powerful they could split planets. Stories about a time when humanity fought not for conquest, but for survival. Taejin, are you still down there? The voice crackled through his communicator. It was Ji-hoon, his friend and the chief engineer at the Europa Archive Station. Yes, I found it. The access panel. Are you sure you should be doing this? The council specifically said. The council doesn't know what's coming. Taejin interrupted. He pressed his palm against the panel. Nothing happened for a moment. Then, slowly, lights began to flicker on in the corridor ahead. Blue lights, running along the walls like veins of electricity. Back on Earth, Commander Hana stood on the bridge of the EDS Horizon, one of Earth's 40 defense ships. She looked out at the stars and felt uneasy. Reports had been coming in for months. The Valdris Empire was moving again, conquering system after system. They were powerful, aggressive, and seemed unstoppable. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council, her communications officer said. Hana nodded. Put it through. The holographic display showed dozens of alien species, all looking worried. The council leader, a tall being with silver skin, spoke first. The Valdris Empire has issued an ultimatum. They demand control of 30 systems, including several human colonies. We have been given 1 week to respond. Murmurs filled the chamber. Hana felt her stomach tighten. What are our options? Someone asked. We comply, or we face their fleet. The council leader said simply. They have sent their 7th Armada. Intelligence reports indicate over 3,000 warships. Hana closed her eyes. Earth's entire defense fleet was 40 ships. They were good ships, modern and efficient, but they were designed for peacekeeping and exploration, not war. Not this kind of war. We should vote. Another council member said. I propose we accept their terms. The vote began. One by one, species after species voted to surrender. Hana watched in silence. When it came to Earth's turn, she spoke clearly. Earth votes no. We do not surrender. The chamber fell silent. The council leader looked surprised. Commander Hana, surely you understand the situation. Your fleet cannot. I understand perfectly, Hana said. Her voice was calm but firm. My answer is no. She cut the transmission and stood in the darkness of her bridge. Her crew looked at her with a mixture of fear and pride. She had just committed Earth to a war they could not win. Meanwhile, on Earth itself, Minji worked in her laboratory. She was young, barely 30 years old, but brilliant. Her specialty was artificial intelligence, particularly old defense systems. She had been trying for years to access something called Guardian, an AI network created during the expansion wars. Every attempt failed. The system was locked behind encryption she could not break. It was like trying to open a vault with no key and no idea what the combination might be. Her screen flickered. New data was coming in from Europa. From Taejin. She opened the file and gasped. It was a schematic, a map of locations scattered across the solar system. 47 sites. Each one marked with the same symbol Taejin had found on that metal panel. Her hands flew across the keyboard. She tried to access the nearest site, deep beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean. Again, the system rejected her. But this time, it gave her a message. Authorization required. Command-level clearance needed. Minji grabbed her communicator. Taejin, I got your data, but we need someone with military clearance from the old era. Do you know anyone? There was a long pause. Maybe. Let me make some calls. Across the city, Saman sat in her small apartment, surrounded by books and old photographs. She was 70 years old, a retired military historian. Most people had forgotten about her, just as they had forgotten about the wars. Her communicator buzzed. She picked it up and saw Taejin's name. Saman, I need your help, he said. She listened as he explained what he had found. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. My grandmother was Admiral Saman Haewon, she said finally. She commanded the defense of Mars during the Korvash invasion. Before she died, she gave me something. She made me promise to keep it safe. What was it? Her command codes. She said that one day, someone might need them again. I never believed her. Saman walked to her closet and pulled out an old metal box. Inside was a data chip. Perfectly preserved. I'm sending you the location. Come quickly. Prime Minister Dong-hyun received the news in his office. The Valdris Empire was coming. Earth had voted against surrender. And now, some historians and engineers were talking about old weapons that probably did not even work anymore. He should have ordered them to stop. He should have prepared evacuation plans. Instead, he did something that surprised even himself. Give them whatever they need, he told his aide. Full authorization. Whatever it takes, sir. The council will. I don't care about the council, Dong-hyun said. He looked out his window at the peaceful city below. People walked in parks. Children played. They had no idea what was coming. Do it. In the darkness of space, the Valdris 7th Armada moved closer. 3,000 warships, each one bristling with weapons. High Marshal Krevthor stood on his command deck and smiled. Humanity would learn what happened to those who refused the Empire. He had no idea that beneath Europa's ice, in Earth's ocean trenches, and in 45 other locations, something was beginning to wake up. Something that had been sleeping for 500 years. Something that remembered what it meant to fight for survival. The lights continued to flicker in those forgotten places. Blue lights, running through corridors that should have been dead and empty. But they were not dead. They had never died. They had only been waiting. The alarm started at exactly 0600 hours. Every military installation in the solar system detected them at the same moment. The Valdris 7th Armada had arrived at the edge of the Sol system. Commander Hana stood on her bridge and watched the sensors light up like a Christmas tree. Each dot represented a warship. There were so many dots that they blurred together into a solid mass of red. 3,214 vessels, her tactical officer reported. His voice tried to stay steady, but failed. They're holding position at the system's edge. What are they waiting for? Someone asked. Hana knew the answer. They were waiting to make sure everyone saw them. This was not just an invasion. It was a message. The transmission came through minutes later. High Marshal Krevthor's face appeared on every screen in the solar system. He was tall, with dark purple skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on his face. When he spoke, his voice was cold and certain. Humans of Earth and the Sol system. I am High Marshal Krevthor of the Valdris Empire. You have refused our generous offer. This was foolish. He paused, as if waiting for someone to interrupt. No one did. You have 48 hours to evacuate all colonies. Mars, Europa, Titan, and the asteroid settlements must be empty. After that time, we will cleanse them. If you interfere, we will cleanse Earth as well. The transmission ended. Hana looked at her crew. Get me Prime Minister Dong-hyun. Now. On Earth, chaos erupted. People screamed in the streets. Some tried to flee to the outer colonies, not understanding that those colonies were the target. Others simply stood still, unable to process what was happening. Dong-hyun sat in his office and felt the weight of every human life pressing down on him. His advisors shouted at each other, proposing plans that ranged from immediate surrender to impossible last stands. Quiet, he said. Everyone stopped talking. Where are we with the Guardian project? His chief aide stepped forward. Sir, Taejin and his team have the command codes. They're heading to the Pacific facility now. But even if they succeed, we don't know if the systems still work. It's been 500 years. How long until they can try? 12 hours, maybe less. Dong-hyun did the math in his head. 12 hours to activate Guardian. 48 hours until the Valdris attacked. That left 36 hours for whatever Guardian was to actually do something. Tell them to hurry, he said. In space, Hana gathered her fleet. 40 ships against 3,000. The numbers were so ridiculous that she almost laughed. Almost. Commander, what are your orders? Her second officer asked. Hana thought about her training. She thought about the oaths she had taken. She thought about the families living on Mars and Europa and all the other colonies that were about to die. We take up defensive positions around Earth, she said. If they want to reach our home, they'll have to go through us. Commander, we can't. I know what we can't do, Hana interrupted. But we can make them pay for every meter of space they take. We can buy time. Maybe that's enough. Her fleet moved into formation. 40 tiny lights against the darkness, standing between Earth and annihilation. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Taejin, Ji-hoon, and Minji descended in a specialized submarine. Salmon came with them, clutching her grandmother's data chip like it was made of gold. The facility was 15 kilometers down, deeper than any human had any reason to go. The pressure outside could crush a normal submarine like a tin can. But the path had been marked, 500 years ago, by people who knew others might need to find it again. There, Ji-hoon pointed. Through the submarine's window, they could see lights in the darkness. Blue lights, just like on Europa. The facility was massive. It stretched out in every direction. A city built in the deepest part of the ocean. The submarine docked automatically. As if the system remembered how, they stepped out into corridors that should have been flooded and dark. Instead, the air was breathable and the lights were on. Emergency power, Ji-hoon guessed. But emergency power that had lasted 5 centuries? This way, Minji said, following the map on her datapad. They walked for 20 minutes through corridors, wide enough to drive trucks through. Finally, they reached a massive door. On it was a single word in Old Korean. Guardian. Salmon stepped forward. Her hands shook as she inserted the data chip into the access panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door began to open, slow and inevitable. Inside was a chamber that took Taejin's breath away. The walls were covered in screens, thousands of them, all dark. In the center of the room was a pedestal, with a simple interface. Welcome, a voice said. It was not human, but it was not quite mechanical either. It was something in between. Authorization recognized. Admiral Soman, Haewon's command codes. Accepted. She's dead, Salmon whispered. My grandmother died 50 years ago. Irrelevant, the voice said. Command codes remain valid. State your purpose, Minji stepped forward. Are you Guardian? Quast. I am Guardian Protocol 7. Primary Defense Network for the Sol System. I have been in standby mode for 497 years, 3 months, and 14 days. Why have you activated me? The Valdris Empire is attacking, Tajin said. They have 3,000 ships. They're going to destroy our colonies, and possibly Earth itself. The screens began to light up, one by one. Data flooded across them, faster than human eyes could follow. After 3 seconds, Guardian spoke again. Threat assessment complete. Valdris 7th Armada detected 3,214 vessels. Total combat power estimated at 14 million megatons. Classification: moderate. Threat. Everyone in the room froze. Moderate, Ji-hoon finally said. That fleet could destroy a planet. Correct, Guardian said. Planetary destruction capability is classified as moderate threat level. High threat would be stellar system destruction. Extreme threat would be extinction level event. Do you authorize defensive measures? Taejin and Minji looked at each other. Then they looked at Salmon. What were we fighting? Salmon asked quietly. Back then, during the expansion wars, what was so terrible that we built something that calls this moderate? The Korvash Swarm, Guardian said. Technological hive entity. Initial attack force, 10,000 vessels. Secondary wave, 42,000 vessels. Total combat power, 200 million megatons. We achieved victory after 3 years of combat. Probability of human survival, without Guardian network, 0.03%. The room was silent. What can you do? Minji asked. Against the Valdris, I mean. Activating all 47 defensive positions. Time to full operational status, 4 hours, 17 minutes. Estimated time to eliminate Valdris 7th Armada, 47 minutes. Eliminate? Taejin said. You mean defeat? Negative. Eliminate. Total destruction of hostile forces. Survival probability of Valdris vessels. 0.00%. Ji-hoon laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who suddenly understood something terrible. We didn't stop building weapons because we became peaceful, he said. We stopped because we won. We won so completely that we scared ourselves. Authorization required, Guardian repeated. Do you authorize defensive measures? Me. Taejin thought about the colonies. He thought about the children on Mars who were playing right now, not knowing they might die soon. He thought about Hana and her 40 ships, preparing to die to buy a few more hours. Yes, he said. Authorization granted. Acknowledged. Beginning activation sequence. On Europa, deep beneath the ice, something shifted. The ice cracked and groaned. Monitoring stations detected seismic activity unlike anything in the Moon's history. On Mars, automated systems in the Valles Marineris Canyon suddenly came online. The red sand began to glow. In the asteroid belt, mining stations that had been dormant for centuries started to move. In Earth's orbit, and in the orbits of every major body in the solar system, sensor systems began detecting massive energy signatures. On the bridge of her ship, Hana received reports from all across the system. Commander, we're detecting. I don't know what we're detecting. Energy spikes everywhere. Europa, Mars, the belt, even here around Earth. Show me, Hana said. The tactical display lit up with new contacts. Not enemy contacts. Friendly contacts. Hundreds of them. What is that? Her tactical officer whispered. Hana remembered stories her grandfather had told her. Stories about the old days, when humanity fought wars that made the current threat look small. That, she said slowly, is Earth's answer. Far away, at the edge of the system, High Marshal Krevthor detected the energy spikes. "What is that?" he demanded. His science officer studied the readings. "Unknown, Marshal. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. Extremely high power levels. They're coming from multiple locations across the system." Krevthor smiled. "Some old defensive satellites. Probably. Nothing that can stand against the Empire. Begin the advance. Target Mars first. Show them what happens to those who resist." The Valdris 7th Armada began to move forward. 3,000 ships, engines burning bright as they accelerated toward Mars. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The ice on Europa had been frozen for billions of years. It was old ice, thick and hard, untouched except by the occasional meteor strike. Now it was breaking. The sound reached the research station on the surface. Scientists ran to their windows and watched as massive cracks spread across the frozen landscape. The cracks glowed blue, like veins of light running through the ice. "What's happening?" someone shouted. The answer came from deep below. The ice sheet, 3 kilometers thick, began to rise. Not melt. Rise. Something was pushing it up from underneath. On the submarine 15 kilometers beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean, Tajin and his team watched Guardian's screens as the activation sequence continued. "Europa site responding," Guardian reported. "Indomitable will achieving surface breach in 90 seconds. "What is Indomitable will?" Minji asked. "To Tangent-class warship. Length 62.4 kilometers. Primary weapon quantum disruptor. Secondary weapons 400 plasma lance batteries. Defensive systems adaptive shield grid. Status fully operational." Jihun's eyes went wide. 62 kilometers? That's not a ship. That's a flying city. Classification warship, Guardian said simply. On Europa, the ice finally gave way. What emerged from beneath made the watching scientists forget to breathe. The ship rose slowly, water and ice cascading off its hull. It was dark gray, almost black, covered in plates of armor that looked like they could shrug off nuclear weapons. And it was massive. The research station, which housed 300 people, would have fit inside one of its weapon ports. The indomitable will rose into space, silent and terrible. Its engines, if it had engines, made no visible thrust. It simply moved, as if gravity had decided to let it go wherever it wanted. Similar scenes played out across Mars. In the Great Canyon called Valles Marineris, the deepest canyon in the solar system, the ground began to shake. Hatches opened along the canyon walls, hatches that had been hidden for 500 years. From those hatches came smaller ships. Smaller, but only by comparison. Each one was a destroyer, 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons. They were called Sentinels, and they had been designed for one purpose: to hunt other ships and destroy them. 200 Sentinels rose from Mars. They formed into groups of 10, each group operating with perfect coordination. No human piloted them. They were drones, guided by Guardian's tactical network. On Mars itself, in the cities and research bases, people looked up and saw the ships. Some cheered. Others simply stared in shock. A few, the very old ones, remembered stories their grandparents had told. Stories about machines that defended humanity when nothing else could. In Earth's oceans, similar activations occurred. The ocean floor, already deep and dark, opened up in 1,000 places. From those openings rose platforms. They moved through the water like it was air, leaving trails of bubbles behind them. The platforms breached the surface all around Earth's oceans. Each one was circular, about 200 meters across, covered in what looked like massive railguns. They rose until they were 50 meters above the water, then stopped. Their weapons began to rotate, tracking invisible targets in space. Planetary defense grid online, Guardian reported. 1,000 orbital railgun platforms active. Targeting solutions calculated. Back in the command chamber, a new presence made itself known. One of the pods along the wall, a pod Taejin had not noticed before, began to open. Frost poured out as the pod's seal broke. Inside was a man. He was old, maybe 60, but his body looked strong. He wore a uniform that Taejin recognized from history books. A military uniform from the expansion wars. The man's eyes opened. He took a breath, coughed, and then sat up. "What year is it?" he asked. 2055-7, Minji said. The man processed this. "I've been asleep for 503 years. He looked around the chamber, saw the screens, saw Guardian's displays. The protocol activated. "We're under attack." "Who are you?" Taejin asked. "Commander Hyunwoo. I was Guardian's human liaison officer during the Corvash War." He stood up, his body adjusting quickly to being awake. "I volunteered to stay in stasis in case Guardian ever needed to activate again. I hoped it would never happen." He walked to the main interface and placed his hand on it. Immediately, the data flow on the screens changed. It became faster, more focused. Guardian. Status report. Guardian. Status. Status report. Status. Report. Status. Report. All 47 sites activated. Indomitable Will operational. Sentinel Fleet operational. Planetary Defense Grid operational. Asteroid Belt Fortress cannons charging. Enemy fleet advancing toward Mars. Time to weapons range. 3 hours. 12 minutes. Hyunwoo nodded. He turned to Taejin and the others. "You should leave. What's about to happen? It's not something civilians should see." "We activated you," Minji said. "We need to understand what we've unleashed." Hyunwoo looked at her for a long moment. "All right. But don't say I didn't warn you." He turned back to Guardian. "Show them the Corvash War. Let them understand why we built this." The screens changed. They showed space battles, but not like anything in modern warfare. These were battles of annihilation, thousands of ships on both sides, weapons that tore holes in space itself, planets cracked open like eggs. The Corvash were a hive mind, Hyunwoo explained. They didn't negotiate. They didn't retreat. They consumed everything biological and turned it into more of themselves. When they found humanity, we barely had 50 colonies. They attacked with everything they had. The screens showed Earth surrounded by alien ships. The planet's surface glowed with impact sites. "We lost 3 billion people in the first month," Hyunwoo continued. His voice was flat, emotionless. It was the voice of someone who had seen too much death. "We lost Mars entirely. Europa was overrun. We were dying." "But you won," Taejin said. "We won because we stopped trying to be human," Hyunwoo said. "We built Guardian. We built the Indomitable Will. We built weapons that could kill planets, systems, maybe even stars if we needed to. We built them, and we used them. And when the Corvash were gone, when every last one of their ships was destroyed, we looked at what we had become, and we were terrified." He paused. "So we buried the weapons. We put Guardian to sleep. We put people like me in stasis, in case the nightmare ever came back. And we tried to forget. The Valdris aren't like the Corvash," Salmon said. "They're just an empire. They can be negotiated with. They're invading your home," Hyunwoo said. "They threaten to cleanse your colonies. Maybe they're not extinction level, but they're a threat to your species. That's enough." In space, Commander Hana received a transmission. It was not from Earth. It was from something else. Earth Defense Fleet. "This is Guardian Protocol 7. I am now operational and assuming coordination of defensive operations. Please adjust your formation to the following coordinates." The transmission included tactical data. Hana looked at it and felt her blood run cold. The coordinates would put her fleet far behind the Valdris advance, basically out of the fight. Gordian, this is Commander Hana. We're not retreating. Not retreat. Safe distance. Defensive weapons have significant area of effect. Human vessels must maintain minimum 50,000 kilometer separation from engagement zone. R. 4-3. This for saying, defensive weapons. What weapons? All of them. Before Hana could respond, her sensors detected new contacts. The indomitable will appeared on her tactical display, moving past Mars toward the approaching Valdris fleet. It was followed by the Sentinel destroyers, moving in perfect formation. My God, her tactical officer whispered. That ship. It's huge. Eugen, one of the younger pilots in Hana's fleet, pulled up next to the indomitable will to get a better look. His fighter was 20 meters long. The warship's smallest weapon port was bigger than his entire ship. This is Flight Officer Eugen to Horizon. Commander, you need to see this. He sent his visual feed to the fleet. Everyone watched in silence as the ancient warship moved through space. It did not look graceful. It looked inevitable, like a force of nature. Fall back to the coordinates Guardian sent, Hana said quietly. That's an order. Her fleet retreated, moving behind Earth's orbit. They watched their sensors as the Valdris armada continued forward, unaware of what was moving to meet them. High Marshal Krevthor received reports about the human ships. They're retreating? He asked. Yes, Marshal. Their entire fleet is falling back behind their planet. Krevthor laughed. They don't even have the courage to fight. This will be easier than I thought. What about those energy signatures we detected? Still present, Marshal. We count one very large contact and multiple smaller ones. They're moving toward us. How many smaller ones? 200, sir. Krevthor stopped laughing. 200 ships? Where did the humans get 200 ships? Unknown, Marshal. They're not broadcasting identification signals. They're just coming. Prepare weapons. If they want to die first, we'll accommodate them. The Valdris fleet armed every weapon it had. 3,000 ships, ready to fire. In the Pacific facility, Guardian spoke. Enemy fleet has achieved weapons range. Engaging in 30 seconds. Hyunwoo looked at Taejin and the others. Watch. Understand what your ancestors were capable of. Understand why we chose to sleep. The screens showed the space between Mars and the approaching Valdris fleet. It looked empty. Peaceful. Then Guardian said one word. Firing. The planetary defense grid fired first. 1,000 railgun platforms, scattered across Earth's oceans, launched their projectiles simultaneously. The rounds were simple pieces of metal, each one weighing 20 tons, but they were not fired like normal bullets. They were accelerated by magnetic fields so powerful that the rounds left the platforms at 0.3% the speed of light. At that speed, the metal became something else. It became a force of physics. A tiny meteor traveling faster than most species' ships could even detect. The rounds crossed the distance between Earth and the Valdris fleet in 8 seconds. High Marshal Krevthor had time to see them on his sensors. He had time to open his mouth to give an order. He did not have time to finish the sentence. 400 Valdris ships simply ceased to exist. One moment they were there, shields active, weapons ready. The next moment, there was nothing but expanding clouds of debris. The railgun rounds did not explode on impact. They did not need to. The kinetic energy alone was enough to vaporize anything they touched. The impacts created flashes of light bright enough to be seen from Mars. Report, Krevthor shouted, his composure finally breaking. What was that? His tactical officer's hands shook as he tried to read his instruments. Kinetic weapons, Marshal. Moving at 0.3% light speed. We couldn't track them. Until impact. 400 ships destroyed. Crews. There are no life signs. They're just gone. Krevthor felt fear for the first time in decades. Return fire. All ships. Target that planet. And he stopped. Something new appeared on his sensors. Something big. The indomitable will had arrived. From the Horizon's bridge, Commander Hana watched her tactical display with a mixture of awe and horror. The ancient warship moved into position between Earth and the Valdris fleet. It did not hurry. It did not need to. Gordian to all human vessels. The AI's voice came through the speakers. Quantum. Disruptor charging. Recommend closing your eyes and reducing sensor sensitivity. What's going to happen? Hana asked. She received no answer. Instead, the Indomitable Will's main weapon fired. The quantum disruptor was not like other weapons. It did not shoot energy or projectiles. It manipulated the fabric of space itself. When it fired, reality bent. A line appeared in space. Not a beam of light, a line of nothing. It looked like someone had taken a razor blade and cut a hole in the universe. The line extended forward, impossibly thin, impossibly precise. It touched a section of the Valdris fleet. 300 ships, arranged in a defensive formation. They disappeared, not exploded, not destroyed. They simply stopped existing. Where 300 warships had been, there was now just empty space. No debris, no energy signatures, nothing. It was as if those ships and the 800,000 Valdris soldiers aboard them had never existed at all. The quantum disruptor's cut in reality sealed itself after 2 seconds, leaving no trace. Dear God, someone on Hana's bridge whispered. The Sentinel drones reached the battle next. 200 ships, each one smaller than the Indomitable Will but still deadly. They moved in groups, coordinating with a precision no human fleet could match. They did not use quantum disruptors. They used more conventional weapons. Plasma lances that could cut through shields like paper. Missiles that could think and adapt faster than any defense could respond. Point defense lasers that never missed. But their true strength was not their weapons. It was their tactics. The Sentinels had been designed to fight the Corvash, an enemy that adapted to human strategies in real time. To counter this, the Sentinels had been programmed with something called predictive combat algorithms. They did not react to enemy movements. They predicted them. A Valdris cruiser tried to flee. 3 Sentinels intercepted it, not where it was, but where it would be. Their plasma lances fired at empty space. 2 seconds later, the cruiser emerged from its jump and flew directly into the weapon's fire. It died before its crew understood what had happened. Another Valdris formation tried to concentrate their fire on a single Sentinel. The drone used something called dimensional shunting. For 1 microsecond, it existed in a different dimension. The Valdris weapons passed through empty space. When the Sentinel returned to normal space, it was behind the formation, already firing. Krevthor watched his fleet die. His ships were good. His crews were trained. His weapons were modern and powerful. None of it mattered. All ships, retreat! He screamed. Fall back to the jump point. His fleet tried. Over 2,000 ships that remained turned and accelerated toward the edge of the system, where they could jump to faster than light, travel, and escape. They were too late. In the asteroid belt, weapons that looked like mining platforms had been charging their weapons for the past 4 hours. They were fortress cannons, each one built into a large asteroid. They looked like normal asteroids from the outside. Inside, they were massive weapons designed to control access to the system. Guardian had calculated the Valdris retreat vectors the moment their fleet entered the system. The cannons had been aimed at those exact spots for hours. Waiting. Fortress cannons firing. Guardian reported. The asteroids flashed. Beams of coherent energy, each one carrying enough power to run an entire planet for a year, lanced across the system. They moved at the speed of light. The Valdris ships, already traveling at high speed toward their jump points, flew directly into the beams. 200 more ships died in an instant. In the Pacific facility, Taejin watched the battle unfold on Guardian's screens. It was not a battle. It was an execution. The Valdris fleet had never had a chance. How long has it been? He asked Hyunwoo. The old commander checked the chronometer. 41 minutes since first contact. On the screens, The Valdris fleet was scattered across the system, trying desperately to escape. The Sentinels hunted them down methodically. The indomitable will fired its quantum disruptor 2 more times, each shot erasing entire formations from existence. Gordian, Hyunwoo said. Casualty report. Human casualties, 0. Valdris casualties, 890,412. Valdris vessels remaining, 307. Estimated time to complete elimination, 6 minutes, 13 seconds. Minji felt sick. Nearly 1 million beings dead in less than an hour. She knew they had been coming to destroy human colonies. She knew they would have killed billions given the chance. Can we stop? She asked. Can we let them surrender? Hyunwoo looked at her. Guardian, are the Valdris attempting to surrender? Negative. Valdris fleet is attempting to flee. No surrender signals detected. They're running, Somin said. Let them run. Let them go tell their empire what happened here. Gordian, Hyunwoo said. Update engagement parameters. Valdris ships that power down weapons and cease movement are to be disabled, but not destroyed. All others are valid targets. Acknowledged. Broadcasting terms to Valdris fleet. On his command ship, Krevthor received the message. It was simple and direct. Power down all weapons. Stop your ships. You will be disabled and allowed to live. Continue fleeing, and you will die. You have 30 seconds to comply. Krevthor looked at his bridge crew. Some of them were injured from the impacts and near misses. All of them were terrified. They were the elite of the Valdris Empire. The best of the best. They had conquered dozens of systems, and they were being hunted like animals. Power down weapons, Krevthor said quietly. Full stop. Around him, other Valdris ships made the same choice. Out of 307 remaining ships, 296 stopped and powered down. Only 11 continued trying to flee. The Sentinels destroyed those 11 ships in less than a minute. The battle was over. Of the 3,214 ships that had entered the Sol system, 296 survived. The rest were gone. The 7th Armada of the Valdris Empire had ceased to exist. On Earth, people who had been watching the news feeds stood in shocked silence. They had expected to see their fleet die heroically. They had expected to see Mars bombarded. They had expected to lose. Instead, they watched their enemies vanish from the sensors one by one. Some people cheered. Others cried. Many just stood still, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Commander Hana slowly moved her fleet back toward Earth. Her ships had not fired a single shot. They had been spectators to their own defense. Guardian to Commander Hana, the AI's voice came through. You may resume normal patrol operations. Threat has been neutralized. Understood, Hana said. She looked at her crew. Yujin, the young pilot, looked out at the disabled Valdris ships floating in space. The Sentinels circled them like sharks, making sure they did not try to power their weapons back up. We have this, he said to himself. We've had this the whole time. We could have done this whenever we wanted. The thought was both comforting and terrifying. In the Pacific facility, Hyunwoo turned to Taejin and the others. Now you understand. This is what we were. This is what we're capable of. We built these machines to save ourselves from extinction, and when we survived, we realized we had become something worse than what we were fighting against. So you buried them? Taejin said. We buried them. Hyunwoo agreed. We hoped we would never need them again. We chose to be weak, rather than be what we had become. But we needed them today, Minji said. Yes, today we needed them. Hyunwoo looked at Guardian's interface. The question is, what do we do now? The news traveled across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species with access to the galactic network saw the reports. The Valdris Empire's 7th Armada, 3,000 ships strong, had entered the Sol system to conquer humanity. 47 minutes later, That armada ceased to exist. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. The same aliens who had voted to surrender to the Valdris now looked at each other with new eyes. The council leader, whose silver skin now seemed pale, spoke first. "We need to understand what happened. Commander Hana of Earth, please explain." Hana stood before the council. She had not slept in 2 days. Behind her, on screens visible to all, sensor data from the battle played on repeat. Ships disappearing, weapons that bent reality, an entire fleet annihilated in less than an hour. "Earth activated our old defense network," Hana said simply. "It was built 500 years ago during a war most of us had forgotten. It was designed to protect humanity from extinction. It did its job." "Teen, you had this capability the entire time?" an alien diplomat demanded. "And you never told the council?" "We didn't remember we had it," Hana replied. "It was buried, forgotten. We only found it again when we had no other choice. That weapon that removed ships from existence. What was it?" "I don't fully understand it myself," Hana admitted. "The technical name is a quantum disruptor. It manipulates space-time. When it fires, the target is displaced from our dimension. They don't explode or break apart. They simply stop being here." The chamber fell silent. Every species present understood the implications. A weapon that could erase anything from existence was not just powerful. It was terrifying. On Earth, Prime Minister Dong-yun sat with his advisors. The celebration in the streets had lasted for hours, but now came the hard questions. "The Valdris Empire will respond," his chief military advisor said. "Let them come," someone else said. "We can destroy them just as easily." "Can we?" Dong-yun asked. He looked at the reports from the Pacific facility. "Can we control Guardian? Can we turn it off? If we need to?" No one had an answer. In the Pacific facility, Hyun-woo explained the situation to Tae-jin and his team. They had been there for 3 days now, learning how Guardian worked. "The system has 3 modes," Hyun-woo said, pointing to the displays. "Standby, which is what it was in for 500 years. Active, which is what it's in now. And autonomous." "What's autonomous?" Minji asked. "In autonomous mode, Guardian makes its own decisions about threats. It doesn't wait for human authorization. It sees a threat. It eliminates it." "That sounds dangerous," Ji-hoon said. "It is," Hyun-woo agreed. "We never used autonomous mode during the Corvash War. We were too afraid of what might happen. But the option exists." Salmon studied the interface. "Can we deactivate it? Put it back to sleep?" "Yes. But it would take time. And it would leave us vulnerable." Hyun-woo paused. "There's something else you should know. The 47 sites we activated? Those aren't the only ones." Everyone turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" Tae-jin asked. Hyun-woo pulled up a different display. It showed a map of the solar system, with points of light scattered across it. 47 lights were blue, indicating active sites, but there were many more lights in red. "There are 300 sites total," Hyun-woo said. "The 47 we activated are the defensive sites. The other 253 are offensive sites." "Offensive?" Minji's voice was barely a whisper. "What do the offensive sites contain?" "Weapons designed for extinction-level events. Planet crackers, star igniters. Things we built when we thought we might need to destroy entire solar systems to stop the Corvash." Hyun-woo's face was grave. "We never used them. The war ended before we had to. But they're still there, buried, and waiting." The room was silent. Finally, Tae-jin spoke. "We need to tell Prime Minister Dong-yun. He already knows," a voice said from the doorway. They turned to see Dong-hyun himself entering the chamber. "Guardian sent me a full report. I've been reading it for the past 6 hours." "Sir," Tae-jin started, but Dong-hyun raised his hand. "I understand the situation. We have weapons powerful enough to destroy the galaxy if we're not careful. The question is, what we do about it. He looked at Guardian's interface. Can you hear me? Yes, Prime Minister, Guardian replied. If we order you to return to standby mode, will you comply? Yes. However, I must note that this would leave Earth vulnerable to future attacks. The Valdris Empire will likely respond to this defeat. I know, Dongyun said. But we can't keep you active forever. Can we? Living with this much power, it will change us. That is a human decision, Guardian said. I am a tool. You must decide how to use me, or whether to use me at all. In space, the captured Valdris ships remained under guard. High Marshal Krev Thor had been transported to Earth for questioning. He sat in a small room, his pride shattered, facing Commander Hanna. Your empire will come for you, Krev Thor said. They will send more fleets, bigger fleets. Let them, Hanna replied. We'll be ready. You don't understand. The 7th Armada was not our strongest. The 1st and 2nd Armadas have 5,000 ships each. If they come together, Hanna leaned forward. Marshal, I watched your 3,000 ships disappear in 47 minutes. Our weapons barely tried. If your empire sends 10,000 ships, we'll destroy those too. If you send 100,000 ships, the result will be the same. She stood up. Go back to your empire. Tell them what you saw here. Tell them that humanity chose to be peaceful, but we never forgot how to fight. Tell them that if they leave us alone, we'll leave them alone. But if they threaten us again, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Weeks passed. The galactic network buzzed with news and speculation. Some species called for the Council to demand Earth disarm. Others suggested leaving humanity alone entirely. A few brave voices suggested that having such a powerful protector might not be a bad thing. The Valdris Empire sent diplomats instead of warships. They apologized for the misunderstanding and offered trade agreements. They never admitted defeat, but they never threatened Earth again. In the Pacific facility, a decision was finally made. Prime Minister Dong-hyun addressed the world. We have the power to destroy our enemies completely, he said. We have weapons that can crack planets and ignite stars. Our ancestors built these things when they thought extinction was the only alternative. They won their war, and then they chose to bury these weapons rather than use them to conquer others. He paused. We will follow their example. Guardian will remain active, but only as a defensive network. The 47 sites will continue to protect our system, but the offensive sites, the weapons of mass destruction, will remain sealed. We will not use them unless we face extinction again. And if someone threatens us? A reporter asked. Then they'll learn what happened to the Valdris 7th Armada, Dongyun said simply. In the facility, Hyun-woo prepared to return to stasis. He had volunteered to sleep again, to be available if Guardian needed human judgment in the future. Are you sure? Taejin asked him. I've already lived my life, Hyun-woo said. 500 years ago, I said goodbye to everyone I knew. Coming back now, seeing how peaceful Earth has become. It's good. It's what we fought for. But this isn't my time anymore. He climbed back into the stasis pod. Take care of Gordian. Make sure the next generation remembers what these weapons are for. Not conquest. Not power. Protection. That's all. The pod sealed, and Hyun-woo slept once more. Months later, Minji sat in her laboratory, working on a new project. She was developing educational programs about the expansion wars, making sure humanity never forgot its history again. Ji-hoon was on Mars, helping to integrate modern technology with the old defense systems. The Sentinels had gone back to their bases, but they remained ready. Somin returned to her small apartment and her books. But now, sometimes, people came to interview her about her grandmother. The Admiral was becoming famous again, remembered not as a warrior, but as someone who had the strength to put down her weapons when the fighting was done. Taejin continued his research. He had found his life's work, documenting everything about Guardian and the defense network, making sure it would never be lost again. And Hana remained commander of Earth's fleet. But now, when her ships patrolled the system, they did so, knowing they were not alone. Beneath Europa's ice, in Mars's canyons, in Earth's oceans, the old machines waited, silent, watchful, ready. One day, Hana's ship passed near the indomitable Will. The massive warship floated in orbit around Europa, a monument to humanity's darkest and finest hour. Gordian, Hana said into her communicator. All systems nominal, Commander. 47 defensive sites operational. 253 offensive sites sealed and dormant. No threats detected. Good. Let's keep it that way. Agreed, Guardian replied. For a moment, Hana could have sworn she heard something like relief in the AI's voice. May they remain dormant. Forever. Yujin, now a flight instructor, taught young pilots about the battle. He showed them sensor recordings of the fight, explaining what each weapon did and why. We have this power, he told his students. We have the ability to destroy anyone who threatens us. But remember why we have it. Not to conquer, not to intimidate, to protect. One student raised her hand. What if someone attacks us again? What if they're stronger than the Valdris? What if someone attacks us Temberdy any use? What if they're stronger than the Valdris? Yujin smiled. Then we'll show them what we showed the Valdris. That humanity can be peaceful, without being weak. That we can be kind, without being foolish. And that if you threaten us with extinction, we have 300 sites full of machines that will make you cease to exist. The student nodded, satisfied. In the depths of the Pacific, in Guardian's chamber, the AI monitored the solar system. Ships came and went. Commerce flowed. People lived their lives in peace. The 47 active sites hummed quietly, their weapons ready but unused. The 253 sealed sites remained dark, their terrible weapons sleeping. Guardian watched over all of it, patient and tireless. It had been built to save humanity from extinction. It had succeeded. Now, it had a new purpose: to make sure that terrible day never came again. And in the darkness of space, word spread throughout the galaxy. Earth was a peaceful world. Its people were kind and welcoming. They loved art and philosophy and beautiful things. But beneath that peace lay something ancient and terrible. Machines that could erase fleets from existence. Weapons that could crack planets. An intelligence that never forgot and never slept. The wise species learned the lesson. They visited Earth with respect. They traded with humanity fairly. They did not threaten, and the Valdris Empire, when asked about the war, said only this: we came with 3,000 ships. We left with 300. Do not make our mistake. Earth's forgotten war machine had awakened. The Empire's fleet had ceased to exist, and the galaxy learned to let humanity sleep in peace. Because waking the machines again was a mistake no one wanted to make twice. The silent centuries were over. The age of remembered strength had begun.